Good evening, everyone. This is Leanne from Of Love and Shiplap and the founder of Sublimation Graphics and Tutorials here on Facebook. Tonight, we are going to be going over how to divide a design for multi-page printing in Affinity Designer. If you're joining us on Facebook, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is listed up above in the description. And if you're finding this video on YouTube, be sure to come join our Facebook group listed below in the description and at the end of this video. The process of dividing your print pages is very straightforward using a clipping mask feature, and you can use a clipping mask in just about any design program to achieve the same results so that you can print on multiple pages. The main reason why anyone would want to print on multiple pages to divide out their design is because they are trying to print, or they're trying to do a design, they're trying to sublimate a product that is bigger than what their print space allows. So I originally started demonstrating this technique when I was using an SG400, and the reason why was because we faced the issue that it only printed 8.5 by 11, and that made it impossible to do a lot of the things I wanted to make, which included pillow covers and doormats and garden flags, all of which are much bigger than 8.5 by 11. So there's a link in our video description tonight that connects you to the other video I did where you piece together your multi-page design and then also do multiple presses if necessary, if you happen to also be doing a substrate that is bigger than what your press size is. So this is going to be a pretty quick tutorial. We're going to go ahead and start. I'm using Affinity Designer on a Windows laptop. If you are using the Mac version, it may look a little bit different, but all the same features are there. So the first thing we want to do is go to File and New and open up a new Artboard page. You want to make sure your document units is set in inches for this particular project, and then you want to make sure that your document size is going to be a few inches bigger than what is necessary for your substrate. This is just to ensure that you can actually see your design as you're working with it. So the design I'm going to divide tonight is for a doormat from Home Depot. The actual working space that you can sublimate on those doormats is 12.5 inches by 24.5 inches. So I've gone ahead and selected 14.5 inches by 26.5 inches to give myself a 2-inch buffer around on my mat. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK, and we have a new workspace. Next, we're going to bring in our design. To do this, I'm just going to click on the Place Image tool and select one of these great doormat designs that's in my shop, which is www.ofloveandshiplap.us. This is actually my favorite from last year. This was a monogram fall design I did. And of course, this works on a lot of different things, but I proportioned it for a doormat. So it's a split monogram, so it has a space for a name. I'm going to go ahead and add that in there. Just change this font really quick. There we go. Let me just make sure everything is centered. If you don't see these grid lines let you know that everything is centered. If you don't see them on your workspace, all you have to do is click on this magnet that says snapping, and that will give you the lines. When it's not clicked, you won't see the lines. So now that we've got our design together, and if you have a design that you've put together and has multiple pieces, you're going to want to make sure you follow this step especially. So we're going to hit select all of our pieces in our layers panel, and your layers panel might appear over here. You can really click and drag and move this any place that you would like. I like to have mine right on the side where I can see it. So with all of our pieces selected, we're going to right click and hit group. Now we want to go ahead and resize this to make sure that it fits with our with the substrate it's going to be going on. So I have the aspect ratio locked, which is important so we don't skew it. And we already know that the width of our doormat is 24.5. So I'm going to go ahead and select that, and it automatically adjusts the height to also be the correct size. Now, the next thing we want to do is create basically a visual representation of the print pages that we're going to be using. We do this by selecting the rectangle tool and click and drag just to create any generic rectangle. You're going to go over to the navigator, to the transform panel, unlock the aspect ratio, and you're going to set the size to be exactly what your page size is that you're going to be printing on. So 8.5 by 11, 11 by 17, 13 by 19. Now, you want to make sure to take into consideration the fact that if you're printing with most printers, there's either a 1/4 of an inch or a 1/2 inch print margin that that keeps you from getting any kind of full page bleed. So we're going to pretend that we're doing this on 11 by 17 paper. So I'm going to go ahead and set my width to be 10.5 to account for the 1/4 inch margin on each side by 16.5. Now this is to represent our paper. And I'm actually just going to double click on the name and change this to represent our paper. The next thing we want to do is we are going to be layering this across our design so that we can make sure we have enough pages and that our design is, covered properly. So in order to make this easy, we're going to go to our color panel. You always want to make sure to remove the outside stroke by selecting the open circle and then hitting the one that has the little red line through it, because you don't want to accidentally print yourself a black border on your sublimation print. And then we're going to select the full circle to change the color. I usually use red because I think it's a little easier to see when it's overlapped. And then we're going to go up to our opacity, and we're just going to decrease that to 50%. So we'll go ahead and start by layering this over the page, over our design, sorry. So we have our first one in place. Now keep in mind this is supposed to give you a visual representation of the pages that you are about to print. We're going to hit duplicate. And then we're going to drag it over. And we want to make sure that there is this little bit of overlap. It doesn't have to be a ton. You want to aim for 1/4 of an inch, 1/2 an inch, something like that. I usually go with about 1/2 an inch because that gives me a little bit of leeway when I cut my pages. And I do talk about that in the video link that's in the description where I show you guys how to piece the design together and then do the pressing as well. So with that in mind, you're going to create a little bit of an overlap for your print. And this is just to help you make sure everything is lined up properly and evenly, because it's very hard to butt the pages together. This particular technique with the overlap is specifically for soft substrates. You really have to do the finagling to butt the pages together for hard substrates if you're doing something that requires multi-page printing. And in my video that is linked on piecing your pages together and pressing them, I do go over some of the common troubleshooting errors that people face, so be sure to check that video out to see the whole complete process of this. So we still need one more page because this section of our design is not covered yet, so we're going to hit duplicate again, and it'll automatically apply the same overlap. So now you can see that we're going to need 3 pages to print this design. However many pages you've created, because keep in mind you can use this process for as big as you need it to go, quite honestly. You're going to duplicate your design so you have that many of the design as you do pages. So we'll hit duplicate twice, and now we have 3. The next thing we want to do is we are going to nest or clip this into each rectangle, because again, each rectangle represents a page. And we are trying to set this up to make sure it is the right size to be clipped so that it will print the right size and that we can piece them together and put it on our substrate. To nest in Affinity Designer, you simply click whatever element and drag it underneath the name of the item you want it to go into. So if we click our drop down arrow, we can see that this first paper has the design within inside of it. And remember, it has to go under the name, not the icon. So we'll go ahead and do that again, under the name, not the icon. And a third time, under the name, not the icon. So now when we click on this, we can see each one, each paper, virtual paper, has a piece of the design nested inside of it. Now you'll notice that our design looks pretty faded out, and that's because we had set our opacity to 100% when we did this. So we're going to go ahead and select our each one of our papers. We're going to set the opacity back up to 100%, and then we're going to remove that red background or whatever color you choose to use, because if you don't remove it, it's going to print that color. And just like that, we have 3 pages ready to print. Now to print it, we'll go ahead and select our print, go to File and Print. Make sure that one of the things that I noticed about Affinity Designer is that printing is less stress if you make your document space to be the same size as your paper. So we're going to go to File and then Document Setup. We're going to go over to our dimensions. We're going to change this to 11 by 17. There we go. And don't mind the red lines. The red squiggly lines are just spelling error, but they are not going to print when you print this. If you're unsure about your margins, you can go to Document Setup again, select Margins, select Include Margins, and Retrieve from Printer, and it'll create an outline on your page that lets you know where those margins are. So this is why turning your document workspace into your page size at the end of this does make everything a little bit easier, again, to get that visual representation you need to make sure that you are printing your design the right size and that everything goes smoothly with printing. So then you'll just go to File and Print. Make sure that you have your correct printer selected, of course. And then, oh, this already has the page size selected. So once your page size is selected, you can see the shaded red. This is to let you know what section is going to be printed and how big it is. And once we hit OK, this will go ahead and print. Now, I don't need to print this, so I'm not going to hit OK. But then you'll just move it off of your workspace, select your next one, which I moved mine way over here, so we got to bring it back. And you'll repeat the process on the second piece, and then again on the third piece, once each one is printed. So you just move off, print, and then bring the last one over and print as well. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. I hope that this tutorial will be easy for you guys to follow so that you don't have to feel like your print size is a limitation to the things that you can create. If you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, be sure to do that. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your night. Thank you so much for joining us.